I can't believe Chekov was called that insult in Star Trek IV, The Voyage Home. Star Trek IV, The Voyage Home is widely remembered as the funniest and most light-hearted entry in the original Star Trek movie series. From Spock's failed attempts at swearing to Kirk selling his eyeglasses for cash, the movie delivers a time travel romp through 1980s San Francisco that still resonates with fans today. But amid all the comedy, one moment stands out for its unexpected sting when a hospital nurse refers to Ensign Pavel Chekov with an offhand insult that feels surprisingly out of place in such a whimsical film. Yes, we're talking about that moment when the nurse in the hospital hallway snarls, "I don't know if he's a Ruskie, but he's gonna have a hell of a headache." The term Ruskie was jarring, even for 1986, and it's even more shocking to hear in a franchise so often known for promoting tolerance and diversity. So, how did Chekov end up being the target of this Cold War slur in the middle of a movie that's more about saving whales than fighting Klingons? Let's break down why this line is so bizarre, what it says about Star Trek's approach to Cold War politics, and why it actually ends up making The Voyage Home one of the most culturally interesting films in the franchise. The scene in question, a comedy of errors. In Star Trek IV, the crew of the USS Enterprise must travel back in time to 20th century Earth to find humpback whales, the only creatures that can answer an alien probe threatening to destroy the planet. While Kirk and Spock are busy trying to charm a marine biologist and sneak into the whale tank, Chekov and Uhura are assigned a different mission: find nuclear power, which they need to recharge their stolen Klingon bird of prey's energy reserves. Naturally, Chekov, in full Starfleet uniform and heavy Russian accent, wanders around asking 1980s American citizens where to find the nuclear vessels. It's played for laughs, with Chekov's polite and direct questioning baffling San Franciscans police officers and eventually military personnel at Alameda Naval Base. After being caught snooping aboard the USS Enterprise aircraft carrier, Chekov falls and sustains a head injury during a chase. He's taken to a local hospital, where McCoy and Kirk later stage a ridiculous rescue mission. It's in this scene, as McCoy and Kirk barge through the hallways of a frantically busy 20th century hospital, that a nurse mutters the infamous line. She doesn't know who this man is or why he's dressed like a cosplayer from outer space. But to her, with his accent and apparent foreign background, he's a Ruskie. Why Ruskie was so shocking. In modern context, the word Ruskie is widely considered a derogatory slang term. Even in 1986, it was used primarily in Cold War propaganda, war films, or in derisive slang from characters meant to be narrow-minded or jingoistic. It's not necessarily the word itself, it's the tone and context that delivers the insult. Coming from a nurse in a Star Trek film, the line feels especially biting. This is, after all, a franchise built on the idea of a united future Earth, one where humanity has overcome its divisions of race, nationality, and class. By the 23rd century, Chekov isn't a Ruskie. He's a respected Starfleet officer, a crew member of the Federation's flagship. But that's the brilliance of the scene. In this moment, Chekov is suddenly reduced, not by his actions or identity, but by someone else's perception of him. It's a reminder that the world of 1986 was still shaped by fear, bias, and assumptions. Even in a comedy, even in a farcical scene about time travel, Chekov becomes a target of the era's prejudice. Star Trek versus Cold War tensions. When Star Trek first debuted in 1966, it made a point of having Chekov, a Russian, on the bridge of the Enterprise during the height of the Cold War. That decision wasn't random. Gene Roddenberry, the show's creator, was making a deliberate statement that one day the divisions between nations would disappear. Russia and America, who in the real world were locked in nuclear standoff, would one day work together among the stars. Chekov's presence was symbolic. It was bold. And it was progressive. Fast forward to The Voyage Home, and Star Trek has once again dropped Chekov into the real-world tensions of his time. But instead of the optimism of the 23rd century, he's met with suspicion, ridicule, and, in that throwaway line, overt prejudice. It's almost a reversal of his role in the original show. Some fans argue that the insult was unnecessary. Others think it was part of the film's deeper message that 20th century humanity hadn't evolved yet. that while Chekov represents the best of future humanity, the people around him are still trapped in old hatreds. The movie doesn't dwell on the insult, but it does make you wince. And that wince is important. A joke with layers. To be fair, the line was also played for comedy, a dark little jab in a movie full of misunderstandings and fish-out-of-water moments. Much of the voyage home relies on the humor of the crew being entirely out of sync with the past. From Scotty talking to a computer mouse to Spock nerd slapping a punk on a bus, the jokes are rooted in contrast. Chekov's accent was already a punchline throughout the franchise, with his mispronunciations of words like Wessels and nuclear being a long-standing bit. The insult he receives is another example of cultural disconnect, but this time it cuts a little deeper. It's easy to laugh at Chekov's confusion. But when someone calls him a Rusky, the humor takes a sharp turn, not enough to derail the tone, but enough to remind the audience of real-world bias. It's a moment that shouldn't be funny, and yet, in context, it is. That conflict is what makes it so memorable. Walter Koenig's subtle brilliance. Much of what makes Chekov's storyline work in The Voyage Home is due to Walter Koenig's performance. He's always brought a sense of wide-eyed enthusiasm to Chekov, but in this film, he also adds just the right dose of confusion and frustration. Koenig plays Chekov as brave, polite, and incredibly loyal, all qualities that stand in contrast to how others treat him. His reactions in the hospital, especially as he's being operated on by 20th century surgeons, are both vulnerable and heroic. And when McCoy storms in to save him, Koenig perfectly captures that blend of comic timing and emotional sincerity that makes the character so lovable. In a way, Chekov becomes the emotional heart of the time travel subplot, and the casual insult he receives is a reminder that even in comedy, Star Trek never fully turns away from real-world commentary. We're watching the moment today. In 2025, the insult lands differently. The geopolitical tensions between Russia and the West have shifted, but not disappeared. The term Rusky still carries the weight of stereotype, especially when delivered with disdain. Modern audiences are likely to pick up on the deeper implications of that nurse's comment, and perhaps find it even more jarring than audiences did in 1986. But that discomfort might be exactly the point. The Voyage Home isn't just a goofy time travel story. It's also a cultural time capsule. And by inserting a jarring moment like that, the film highlights just how far we've come and how far we still have to go. Star Trek has always challenged its audience to imagine a better future. In this case, it reminds us of the prejudices that must be overcome to get there. Chekov's story isn't just about nuclear power or comic misunderstandings. It's about resilience. It's about identity. And it's about hope. Final thoughts. A slur, a statement, a legacy. I don't know if he's a Rusky, but he's going to have a hell of a headache. It's one line. One throwaway comment from a side character in a film filled with whales, aliens, and time travel. But it sticks with you. Because it reminds us that prejudice, no matter how casual or comedic, always leaves a mark. In the end, Chekov survives. He's rescued by his friends, escapes the 20th century, and helps save Earth from an alien threat. The nurse's insult becomes just one more reminder of the backwardness of a past the crew is happy to leave behind. And maybe that's what Star Trek has we are, so we can imagine who we might